Hi, and welcome to this video introducing the Tilvalg course Cultural Data Science. Thank you for taking the time to watch it. In this video, I'm going to give you a short rundown of who we are on this course and what you'll learn. So who am I? I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about me. My name is Ross. I'm an assistant professor in cognitive science and humanities computing. I'm based primarily at the Centre for Humanities Computing up here in Nobelparken, and I do all my teaching in the Department for Linguistics, Cognitive Science and Semiotics. My background is actually in what I call cognitive, computational and corpus-based analysis of register, genre and style. That's a bit of a mouthful, but what it means is basically that I'm interested in using computers to understand how we use language, and I'm particularly interested in digital literary studies and historical texts. However, as a bit of a side hustle, I also do work which applies machine learning to the study of subjects like art history and archaeology, where the data is primarily images rather than text. Now, I'm not the only person teaching on this Tilvalg. I have help for that from some fantastic colleagues. So firstly, Christopher Nielbo, who is head of the Centre for Humanities Computing. There's a link here to the centre for those who want to learn more about what we do there. But Christopher will be running the first half of this course, which comprises the module Introduction to Cultural Data Science. Secondly, Adela Sobotkova, who is co-director for the Centre for Digital History. Again, there's a link. Adela will be teaching the course Spatial Analytics in the spring semester of 2024. So that's a little bit about who we are on the course, but what actually is cultural data science? So you may have heard some similar terms before. It goes by many names. You may have heard digital humanities, computational humanities, humanities computing. You may even have heard cultural analytics. But essentially though, what we're doing in this course, what we're doing in cultural data science, is using digital tools and computational methods to explore new ways of doing research in subjects which are traditionally thought of as being the humanities. So in some cases, these tools and methods complement traditional approaches, and in others they can actually give new insights into the kinds of objects and artifacts that we're studying. So to give you an example from my work, along with a colleague in literary history, I'm currently working on a book which studies Shakespeare's plays using a computational method known as network analysis. So in this visualization we can see the network of characters in the play King Lear, with the colour and size of individual circles showing the relative importance of characters based on some statistical metrics that we have from the play. And so this kind of network analysis can actually give us some unique insights into how Shakespeare structures his plays, and allow us to say novel things about plays which have otherwise been studied to death. So if you're someone who's studying a subject in the arts and humanities, why is it worth your time learning about cultural data science, learning to do cultural data science? Well, firstly, we're surrounded by data. So according to some estimates, we, humans as a culture, produce 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. Just to give you some perspective there, a quintillion is a 1 followed by 18 zeros. Facebook users alone produce something like 300 million photos every day. And so if we want to be able to make sense of all this data, we need to have the tools and the skills to be able to do that. And this is also true in the context of cultural data. So every day, more and more of this data is being digitized by libraries and research institutions around the world. In the context of language and literature, this massive cultural data is sometimes referred to as the Great Unread. And again, if we as humanities scholars want to understand culture through this data, we kind of need to know how to work at scale with these digital artifacts. And these artifacts aren't simple, okay? Studying images and studying language, for example, requires a range of skills like those you've already acquired over the course of studying your various disciplines at bachelor's level. And that's why this course is not just a typical data science course. It's called cultural data science. And we try never to lose sight of the fact that humanities data is complex, multifaceted and diverse. So what will you actually learn on this course in cultural data science? Well, broadly speaking, you'll learn the following skills, knowledge and competencies. You'll learn how to write software for research purposes in order to work with the kinds of complex digital objects we're referring to. And so this includes, for example, the Python programming language and the R programming language, as well as more general skills related to managing digital projects. You'll also learn a wide range of computational and quantitative methods, many of which are transferable and can be used in a wide range of contexts, including contexts which are not actually related to academic research. And lastly, you'll learn how to design, conduct, and present projects in a professional way, with a particular emphasis on doing this in a traditional humanities context. But again, much of what you'll learn here is transferable and can be used outside of just research contexts. So now we've learned a little bit about what cultural data science actually is and why it's useful to study. Let's look a little bit more closely at the structure of the course and what the individual modules comprise. So in the first semester, you have a 15 ECTS course, which will be primarily run by Christopher Nielbo. And this course is designed to cover fundamental data management and analysis skills for working with the kinds of data that we have. And these are all skills which are going to be necessary for the rest of the program for the spring semester. And so the focus of this module, the introduction course, is on the basic technical skills required for developing quantitative analysis of topics related to human culture. So that's things like project management with GitHub, coding with Python, and some basic statistical methods. Now, I suspect that some of you out there might already be thinking this course isn't for you. Maybe you don't have a strong maths background or any programming experience, and I want to say, don't panic. This is an introductory course, and it's intended to cover all of the basics. So even if you have no existing programming experience, even if you don't know how a computer works, by the end of this course, you will have gained the skills and competencies required for all the modules in semester 2. I promise. So moving on to semester 2, the structure here is a little bit different. So instead of having one large module, 15 ECTS, instead what we have is 3 separate modules. One of these is spatial analytics, which is run by Adela, and the other 2 are run by me. So that's language analytics and visual analytics. I want to spend a couple of minutes unpacking each of these and describing the kinds of things that you'll cover in each of the modules. So the module which is perhaps most unfamiliar to many of you, I suspect, is spatial analytics. My guess is that many of you have never encountered this kind of data in the course of your bachelor's study. I know that it's something I didn't really study when I was doing my bachelor's in linguistics. However, geospatial data, as we refer to it, has increased dramatically in recent years, and so this means things like satellite imagery of landscapes, historical maps, things like that. And there's a growing recognition that understanding the way that we use space is actually crucial when it comes to understanding human culture and how human culture has developed over time. And so spatial analytics is actually super important for a range of disciplines like archaeology, history, urban studies, sociology, even literature, actually. And so to give you an idea of what I mean there, here are some visualizations which show the distribution of different emotions across the City of London through the 18th and 19th century. And so this project, for which there's a link there you can see, used a combination of spatial analytics and language technology to show the changing attitudes and opinions to various neighbourhoods in London, and shows how those attitudes change and shift over a 200-year period. And so this kind of research actually gives us some pretty profound insights into the nature of things like urbanisation and industrialisation in London over this period using cultural heritage data. This is the kind of thing we'd be looking at in spatial analytics in some ways. Alongside that, language analytics is perhaps more immediately understandable to many of us. Many of us work with text data in the humanities. But think about the kinds of language we encounter on a daily basis. So we have things like social media, Twitter and Facebook, newspapers, WhatsApp, advertising slogans, conversations with friends, radios and podcasts, television shows, there's literature in the form of novels and poetry, song lyrics, emails that we receive, presentations that you hear like this, lectures that you have to sit through in class, Zoom chats that you may save from conversations you've had in class settings or something like that. Language is everywhere, okay? And given this vast range of different text types and the overwhelming quantity of data that exists out there in text form, how on earth do we make sense of it all? This is the question we try to answer in language analytics. where we learn how computers can be used to study language and how this can be used to make sense of text data. So at root, language analytics is really about exploring questions related to language and culture through the use of computers and digitized textual data. To put it another way, what we're learning is about something called natural language processing, both in theory and in practice. And so this means thinking about the historical, philosophical and technological challenges of natural language processing. And we'll also touch on things related to subjects like ChatGPT and text generation, something which I expect many of you have heard about in the media lately. So language analytics, in my opinion, is relevant then for literally anyone who works with text data, specifically in a humanities context. And again, to give you an idea of the kind of things we might look at in language analytics, here we can see a graph showing how public attitudes and optimism around COVID vaccines fluctuated and changed over a 6-month period in 2021. And this was studied using data gathered from Twitter. Now, we won't be using any social media data in language analytics, but this does give you an idea of the kind of results that can be generated by using the skills and competencies that you'll learn in this module. And so lastly, we have visual analytics. As with spatial analytics, I suspect this might be a little bit unclear to some of you. There are actually not very many humanities disciplines where we work with images directly. But again, think about how many different kinds of image you encounter on a daily basis. So we have things like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, again, Twitter, Facebook, newspapers, WhatsApp, again, advertising, television, presentations, lectures, Zoom chat, art galleries, research visualizations. Again, like language, images are everywhere. And we're at the point where image data is almost as common as text data, and it's becoming increasingly more common. We live in an increasingly visual culture. And so again, the question arises here, how do we make sense of and study all of this image data that's being generated, both now and historically? Now, this is what we cover in visual analytics, where we learn how to conduct systematic computational analyses of visual artifacts. And essentially what this means is you'll be applying things like computer vision and deep learning to humanities problems. This will be immediately valuable for those of you working in image-based disciplines, so things related to the art world, art curation, art history, cultural heritage preservation. But I think it's also interesting for those of you who work primarily in textual disciplines. So if you work in a text-based discipline, think about the kinds of objects you study and think about whether they contain images. Because I think you might be surprised to realize that there are images in there, even if you're not studying them yet. And to give you an idea of what we'll be doing in visual analytics, here's a screenshot from a paper I published with a colleague from art history, where we used deep learning to study the various kinds of artifacts which can be found in the digital archives of Stedens Museum for Kunst, so the Danish National Gallery. And what we showed here was that deep learning can be used to find specific clusters of objects in their digital collection based on the visual similarity of those objects. And we suggested how this might be used in the context of doing digital art history. So that's an overview of everything that we'll cover in cultural data science and the kind of skills, knowledge and competencies that you'll acquire on this course. However, it's important to note that this isn't just an academic discipline. To be very pragmatic about it, there are things that you'll learn on this course which will greatly increase, for example, your employability on the job market. So we know from research that industry leaders are desperate for people with humanities backgrounds but who can also do tech. The reason for that is it's difficult to teach these so-called soft skills, which are really not soft at all. They're incredibly complex, the kind of things you've been learning for the past few years. And so this Tilvalg is actually a great way for you to be able to demonstrate that you have those abilities and those competencies and to differentiate yourself on an increasingly competitive job market. And that's it. If you have any questions, please make sure to head along to Tilvalg Day on February 9th, where there will be lots of folk there to lend a hand with any questions you have. You're also welcome to drop me an email if you have any more specific questions related to the course or anything I've spoken about. And otherwise, I look forward to seeing you all on Cultural Data Science.